From the cutting down of less high-profile Jedi Council members, to many a valiant sacrifice to give our main heroes a chance at victory. And with a respectful salute to the R Star Wars post that inspired this very list, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 minor character deaths that changed Star Wars forever. Number 10. Yaddle's death cements Dooku's turn. Yaddle didn't even utter a single line during her only prequel appearance, which of course came in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. One of the only other members of Yoda's race then mysteriously vanished from the Skywalker saga by the time of Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, leaving many to wonder what exactly happened to her in the new canon. In Legends, she sacrificed herself to save the city of Natan before being replaced on the council by Shaak Ti, but we'll get to her later. But things were thankfully cleared up in the new canon during the Tales of the Jedi animated series. Here, Yaddle, voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard, not only confirmed that not every one of her species chats like Yoda, but that she also played a vital part in the fall of a certain Jedi Master by the name of Dooku. After stepping down from the Council following the Battle of Naboo, Yaddle would eventually discover that Dooku was working with Darth Sidious on Coruscant. She'd then offer Dooku a chance to make up for his actions by bringing his new master to justice, but it was all a bit too late. Yaddle would ultimately be killed by Qui-Gon Jinn's former master, a death which cemented the still somewhat conflicted Soul's turn to the dark side. And we all know what happened next. Now sure, had Dooku taken Yaddle's offer here instead of, murdering her, there's every chance that Palpatine would have just killed both of them and turned his attention to a new apprentice. But the years that followed this fateful interaction would have certainly looked entirely different without Dooku leading the Separatists or walking on the dark side. And while we're talking about minor characters in Star Wars, I've got a quick question for you. Who is your favorite minor Star Wars character of all time? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 9. Paige Tico's sacrifice allows the Resistance to escape D'Qar. Now, easily the most memorable deaths that went down during Episode 8, The Last Jedi, belong to a sliced-in-half Supreme Leader Snoke and a Luke Skywalker who just used all of his remaining strength to project himself across the galaxy. But there was another death which was perhaps just as impactful as the end of Skywalker and Snoke. Giving her life during the opening moments of this middle sequel, Paige Tico's brave actions as the Resistance attempted to evacuate D'Qar and get away from the First Order proved that even the smallest characters could change this galaxy forever. After being knocked out in the middle of the space battle, Paige eventually comes to and chose to use what energy she had left to set off the bombs and blow up a dreadnought as her ship fell into the flames. It was this heroic final act that gave the Resistance the opening to successfully flee from the enemy, for a bit anyway. Obviously, the First Order would end up catching up to the Resistance due to their hyperspace tracking technology. But had Rose Tico's sister not paid the ultimate price here, there wouldn't have been a Resistance to chase at all. We salute you, Paige. Number 8. Shaak Ti's deleted scene's death could have changed Starkiller's future. Now this is an interesting one, because this is a case of not one, but two deaths of a character resulting in one hell of a change to Star Wars history. Within the Legends continuity, it's revealed that Jedi Master Shaak Ti not only survived Order 66, but that she also went on to train Padawan Maris Brood and some Force-sensitive natives on Felucia. Then, during Star Wars The Force Unleashed, a 2008 video game developed by LucasArts, Ti eventually collides with Darth Vader's apprentice, Starkiller, with the one-time Jedi Council member attempting to guide the dark side Force wielder down a different path. Had a number of scenes not been cut from Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, however, Shaak Ti's interaction with Galen Marek would never have occurred. Ti would be killed in two separate deleted scenes in that prequel, first by General Grievous at the start of the picture, and then by a recently turned Anakin Skywalker during the Order 66 attack on the Jedi Temple. Now that latter death is actually classed as part of the new canon, meaning that Ti never ended up training more Lightsiders in this version of Star Wars history. So had that death, or the Grievous one, been similarly made a part of the expanded universe continuity all those years ago, then Ti's important duel with Starkiller, who would kill her before eventually seeing the light, wouldn't have been possible, changing Legends history in the process. Number 7. If Coleman Trebor hadn't died, Count Dooku may have been stopped earlier. Yaddle wasn't the only person who came oh so very close to stopping Count Dooku way earlier than a certain Anakin Skywalker. Remember in Episode 2 Attack of the Clones when the Jedi arrived to help Obi-Wan Kenobi, Padme Amidala, and the aforementioned Chosen One within the Petranaki Arena on Geonosis? There was definitely a moment there when it looked like one of those Force-sensitive warriors was on the verge of stopping the Clone Wars before they even properly began. As the Jedi fended off waves of droids within the arena, the absolute stud that was Jedi Master Coleman Trebor decided to head right for Dooku himself on a balcony. Now, it's not 100% clear whether he was going to try to simply arrest the former Jedi or strike him down right there and then. But either way, Jango Fett soon arrived to put an end to the Verk hero. Mace Windu would at least avenge his ally by brutally killing the bounty hunter. However, that doesn't change the fact that this minor character was agonizingly close to perhaps preventing the deaths of countless across the galaxy, and his own demise allowed Dooku to live long enough to lead the Separatists in a galaxy-changing war against the Republic. Owen Trebor's death also opened up a seat on the Jedi Council, one that would eventually be taken by none other than Obi-Wan Kenobi. So there's that as well. Number 6, Rats Tyrell's death led to pod racing being outlawed. He also could have won the Boonta Eve race. He may not be the first person that you think of when the subject of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace's Boonta Eve Classic, pops up in conversation, but never forget that the death of poor Rats Tyrell in that race seriously affected this galaxy. So first of all, the background racer, who was incredibly popular on his homeworld of Aleen due to his racing career, was determined to stop the serial cheater Sebulba from winning that Tatooine race. And were it not for a malfunctioning accelerator, who knows, maybe a driven Tyrell could have been the one to earn victory here. A win that would have seen Qui-Gon lose his bet, Anakin Skywalker left on the desert planet as a slave, and Watto bring home a shiny new ship. Instead, Tyrell collided with a collection of stalactites, and, well, kaboom. It turns out that the death of this racer also led to Rat's son, Delon, creating the Rat Tyrell Foundation. This organization would fight to expose the criminal and perilous elements found within the sport, and even managed to get pod racing outlawed in the core worlds, which led to viewership massively declining. It's safe to say then that the galaxy would look very different had Tyrell not tragically died in front of his own traumatized family. Oh, just look at him. Thank you very much for checking out this list here today, my friend, and if you're enjoying yourself, then hit that subscribe button down below and you will get more of these What Culture Star Wars videos in your corner of the galaxy. Number 5, Wade sacrificed himself for Obi-Wan and Leia. The name Wade Rassellian may not immediately spring to mind when talking about heroic sacrifices in the galaxy far, far away, but it definitely should, people. Because if it wasn't for this pilot's fearless actions during the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, both the titular Jedi Master and a certain Princess Leia may have been doomed. You see, during part 4 of the show, after managing to find a young Leia within the Fortress Inquisitorius, Tala Durith, Kenobi, and the princess are surrounded, and look like they're about to be executed by the third sister, Reva, and a group of stormtroopers. However, just in the nick of time, Sully Stark and Wade, 2 members of the Path, swoop in with a pair of T-47 airspeeders to rescue them. But Wade's attempts to distract Reva so Sully had enough time to pick up our heroes ultimately led to his tragic death, with Wade being blown to bits by Reva after she threw an explosive at his ship. Charming. Reva and Darth Vader would still track down Kenobi and co. due to a homing beacon being planted in Leia's droid. But if Wade hadn't risked it all against the enemy here, it very much looked like 2 franchise icons and a one-time Imperial officer would not have made it out of this fortress alive. Number 4, Zam Wesell's death leads Obi-Wan Kenobi to Jango Fett and Kamino. While it did look like Count Dooku was the face of the Separatists, and the Galactic Republic was being led by Chancellor Sheev Palpatine, the latter was actually in control of both sides all along. And it's during Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, when the eventual Emperor begins executing the next phase of his brilliant plan to control the galaxy. A plan which also involves the attempted assassination of Senator Padme Amidala. But the more you analyze this part of the plot, the more you realize that had one part of it not gone the precise way it did in the movie, then things may have turned out quite differently indeed. After failing once again to kill Amidala on Coruscant, bounty hunter Zam Wesell is herself hunted down by Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. She's then suddenly killed by her employer Jango Fett before she could rat on him. And were it not for that murder and exactly how it occurred, Jango Fett firing his Kamino saber dart at this minor character, then Kenobi wouldn't have ended up conveniently finding Kamino and the secret clone army. You know, the clone army who would eventually fight for the Republic, just as Palps planned. So would the Jedi have eventually found the army ordered by Sifo Dyas without Wessel's passing? Perhaps they'd have stumbled on it some other way. Or Zam could have even given them the information they needed if she wasn't, you know. Either way, it definitely feels like Palpatine's secret plan to rule the galaxy would have unfolded differently without this death in Coruscant's underworld, with the secret Sith perhaps having to think of a new, cunning way to lead the Jedi to their eventual means of destruction. Number 3, the rebels who gave their lives to get the Death Star plans to Leia. The closing stages of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, involved Darth Vader, well, going full Darth Vader. Ripping through a ton of nameless rebel soldiers, this pissed-off Sith Lord would evidently stop at nothing to get his cybernetic hand on the Death Star plans that had just been stolen by the good guys. And it was during this properly intense sequence when many a rebel decided to do all they could to prevent the one-time Anakin Skywalker from doing precisely that. If they all just put their hands up, surrendered, and handed those all-important blueprints back to the Empire here, when faced with this terrifying figure, well, there goes the Rebel Alliance's hopes of taking out this evil organization. They didn't though. This lot bravely blasted their weapons at Vader, and were viciously impaled and choked by the cyborg as they desperately passed the plans from rebel to rebel on the Profundity. And these courageous sacrifices would ultimately lead to the destruction of the Empire's big bad superweapon. Along with, number 2, Mythal accidentally saves Vader and sets Luke on the path to becoming a Jedi. In the wake of the Rebel Alliance successfully getting away with those Death Star plans, and Princess Leia Organa eventually being rescued by Luke Skywalker and the gang, the rebels mounted a successful attack on the Empire's secret weapon. Just as Luke, flying an X-Wing, was getting close enough to blow that superweapon to smithereens though, his secret father, Darth Vader, following behind in a TIE Advanced, successfully locked on to his baby boy. But right before he could shoot down his offspring, Han Solo thankfully arrived to save the day. However, he wasn't technically responsible for knocking Vader away from his son. Instead, it was actually the pilot in the TIE Fighter next to the Sith Lords who panicked and accidentally nudged his superior out of the way, shortly after another TIE had been blasted by the Millennium Falcon, and that evasive maneuver would lead to his own demise too. In doing this, the pilot, actually known as Mythal Mauler, did manage to save Vader from the incoming Falcon, but also unintentionally saved Luke from being murdered too, which obviously meant that he could then go on to blow up the Death Star and eventually become a Jedi legend. In other words, one moment of madness completely changed this galaxy. That Mythal, what's he like? Number 1, Arvel Crinid bought Lando enough time to blow up the Death Star too. From one Death Star destruction to another, and ending this list on one final vital sacrifice. The name Arvel Crinid isn't given the respect it unquestionably deserves. If it weren't for this lion-hearted rebel green leader, would the Alliance have been able to successfully take down the Emperor's second destructive superweapon, and move one step closer to taking down the Galactic Empire once and for all? Possibly not. With Lando Calrissian and a few other fighters entering the Death Star 2 to blow it up from within, Admiral Akbar knew that the rebels outside needed to buy them some time and hold off the rest of the Empire's forces. And it's here when all firepower was concentrated on the Super Star Destroyer known as the Executor. Not long after the bridge's deflector shields were knocked out, a Crinid who'd been hit by a laser shot soon realized he was done for. But with his final act, he just about managed to steer his crashing ship into said bridge, taking out everyone within it during this epic sacrifice. The Executor then lost power and smashed into the Death Star 2, with Green Leader's last breath being a major turning point in the Battle of Endor, and an act which helped give Lando and Wedge Antilles the time needed to destroy the second Death Star. After playing a crucial part in changing the galaxy and making it a safer place, he was posthumously rewarded with the Medal of Alderaan for his bravery. Well deserved, I say.